So by session 3, I'm pretty sure everyone who knows anyone knows who is here. So I don't think we need to introduce our characters, but you guys are more than welcome to do introductions and plugs if you'd like. Okay, there we go. All right, so we will just go ahead and just introduce ourselves real quick. You don't have to go into detail. And who wants to do recap? Whoever wants to do a recap, I will give a point of inspiration. Ruby, I believe you already have one, correct?
Yeah, I mean...
But you can do it again if you'd like.
I mean, if they want a point of inspiration, they are free to do so. Or I will just do it.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps you guys can be a bit assertive today.
I'm plenty assertive. I just don't know really. I don't really think there's much to recap from between last session and this session, besides our what's his name, Thronk, who... No, not Thronk. Our Dragonborn who's just trying to sleep with everyone, or the nearest barmaid.
Well, he wasn't trying to sleep with anyone. He was just getting some drinks.
I can throw the recap of things thus far. We basically came together because there was a nobleman has gone missing. He was supposed to show up in the city of Monera. He never did, so they recruited us to go and investigate his plantation house to see why he never showed up. We got there. Him and his family were missing. There were muddy children's handprints all over the place. Some other clues that will come up as irrelevant, I'm sure. And yeah, so then it got dark. We went into the actual town of Maroon, which is my character's old stomping grounds, and went to the tavern. Found out that there's some kind of a plague or a mist that on the land that's caused all the crops to die, and people have been fleeing in droves. So it's pretty much a dead city at this point, except for me still being able to get laid. And we found out that there's at least one other person who had all the food stolen out of her house, and still had like muddy handprints and stuff. And so it is now the next morning. We can go and investigate that. Someone saw some kind of apparition during the night.
That was Ruby, and the Dragonborn had proceeded to vomit everywhere, clear his mind. Questionable decision.
All right. Thank you, Corey. Go ahead and give yourself an inspiration. All right. So you guys awaken the next morning, but not feeling as refreshed as you had hoped. During the night, you guys felt a little restless. Not exactly anything of note, but definitely some uncomfortable feelings. And Ruby, as you were, I'm pretty sure you might have been rummaging through the journal at some point that night before you went to sleep. That night you kind of have a dream, more or less a dream that turns into a nightmare. And this nightmare, you don't remember a whole lot from it because it just kind of escapes you. It just you started off with a pleasant dream about something that you may have had going on in your past at some point, but it kind of melded into darkness, and where you could hear some whispering going on, but it was very distant. And then you hear a voice, not quite sure if it was male or female or young or old, but some sort of strange voice croaking to you in the midst of this darkness, saying, "They never listen to me, and they'll leave me just like everyone else. I have to stop them. I have to. I need some help. I need some help." And then the voice kind of dissipates, and then shortly afterwards, you find yourself lying on your back, staring up at the ceiling at the crack of dawn, as the light is beginning to pierce through the clouds and over the top of the trees, and come through the window there in the room you guys are staying in. And you and Laughing Fox are there. And Thronk is asleep outside, sitting in the chair. And Drygon is asleep and hungover, sleeping somewhere around here. We're not quite sure where. So Laughing Fox and Ruby and Thronk, what do you guys do?
Well, Ruby would kind of wake up a bit alarmed, perhaps trying to decipher the dream, and she feels like it's perhaps a bit irrational to try to diagnose the dream with such limited information, but she kind of assumes it's perhaps a bit of her subconscious thinking about perhaps the way she has treated her mother in the past, often ignored her, but she tries to ignore that for now and just hopes that it doesn't come back even worse. These things having a tendency to do that if ignored for long enough. And she looks around and she sees Laughing Fox either meditating or just kind of lingering around. And you'd see her kind of gently try to get the attention of Laughing Fox just to make sure that she's alright.
Alright. So Laughing Fox is kind of sitting in the window right now. We're in the inn, right?
That's correct.
Alright. So Laughing Fox is she's sitting in the window. The window is open and she's sitting on the windowsill with one leg hanging outside, and she's just kind of looking out into the night.
I'm still dozing in the chair on my watch. Got a small piece of onyx in my hand as I'm resting.
Yeah, and Ruby would just make sure Laughing Fox is alright, but then she would kind of exit the room and spot Thronk sleeping perhaps in the chair, and her eyes narrow a bit as she kind of kneels down, kind of gets in his face, and she says, in her usual manner of speaking, kind of loudly just to make sure he can hear her, and she says, "Wow, that's an interesting strategy. You must be pretending to sleep. They would never expect you to actually be sleeping. That is amazing."
I'm sure at this point I would probably fall back in the chair, like, on the ground. Like, what? You're awake? Okay. We're ready to start the day?
And she would say, "Apparently you're awake too. That's great to hear."
Yeah.
And she would offer to help him up, although he is probably like ridiculously heavy as a half-orc.
Probably. Trying to help me up would probably do more to just pull you down.
Yeah. She would like double grab like one of your arms and like pull with all of her strength, and hope that she doesn't get like destroyed.
Okay. Well, I'm using my other arm to like push myself up and get to my feet. I'll get up and just, is there coffee?
She would think for a moment about that, and she would probably not know for sure. She would say, "No, scientifically, the best cure to a hangover is ample amounts of water. Most of the time, a hangover is actually caused by dehydration."
I had one glass of mead. I don't think it's a hangover.
And she kind of questions this. She knows that the Dragonborn definitely had more than one, and he's still passed out. But she'll reluctantly agree that perhaps he only had one. Maybe she wasn't counting and paying attention to him. She'd be like, I don't know. You'd have to ask the innkeeper about that. I don't know.
Well, the innkeeper's actually sat up at his post again, kind of writing in a journal of his own, and he's just kind of glancing up at you guys from time to time as he's just kind of sitting there writing in his journal. And you look around and you see that the other two doors are still closed, and that Drygon is asleep there. And he's not moving a muscle, and he doesn't seem to be reacting to anything.
At this point, Ruby would kind of let out like a defeated sigh in regards to her companion, the companion who showed up late on the first day and then proceeded to be hungover for the second day and completely missed his shift. And she would kind of make like this joke, and she would say, "Well, we have a policy of if you have 2 consecutive no-shows in a row, that could be grounds for termination." And she just kind of gathers her associates if they want to come down to the lobby and exit out into the thoroughfare with her if they wish to.
And I'll say, "Trust me, I have years of experience with this sort, and there's nothing to worry about. He'll come around."
Excellent. So, Laughing Fox, as you were sitting there, if you decided to get up and head out, before you do so, you're kind of sitting there and you're listening to the sounds coming to life in the village. And you can kind of hear the first thing you start to hear is the blacksmith's hammer. He's somewhere in here, and you can hear his hammer hitting onto something metal, and you kind of hear it echoing around. And you can kind of hear people visiting the well, which is only about 50 feet away from you, maybe behind a house, because you do see a couple of people kind of milling around between the houses, going back and forth, carrying buckets of water and the like. A couple of people dressed for work, obviously. People for the guard and for going out to the fields and tending the cotton and the crops and whatnot. So just the farmer folk who live in the town and the ones that decided to stay behind and haven't left yet. Definitely not too many people, but enough people for you to take notice that that they're starting to get around and mull around the town as well.
I don't know how anyone sleeps around here, and she gets her stuff and walks outside with the rest of the party.
Certainly seems to still be more of a population than we were led to believe.
Yeah, you'd see Ruby awkwardly contort her body, almost like a cat, as she kind of stretches back as far as you could imagine someone could before returning to a normal posture. And she would kind of look over to her allies, and she would try to put on a smile, and she would say, so what do you guys want to do today? I hear we have some places we can investigate, some ghosts perhaps we can wrangle up, or she kind of looks back to the inn or the tavern, and she says, or we could go to the tavern again.
What you said, ghosts? I don't remember hearing about any ghost.
And when he says that, Ruby kind of remembers that Thronk was the one who went to the inn before us, so he wouldn't have known, right?
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
And she's like, "Oh yeah, you were in the inn already." Yeah, I saw a ghost through the fog last night, and it was kind of scary. And she says scary as if it's not really scary. So you're not sure if she actually saw it or if she's just in her usual strange self. Yeah, it was pretty scary. Probably would have possessed us or something. I don't know. I don't know a lot about ghosts. Unless they're magic ghosts.
Well, I think all ghosts are magic of sorts. I've thankfully never had to encounter one, but there are many legends of lost ships and their ghostly crew, and none of them are pleasant.
Either way, I think we should find out what the source of this is. Otherwise, it's only going to get worse for us.
I agree. And I know Bessie's said that her house was broken into, and she said that there was there was mud and small handprints about, just like at the manor. So we can stop in there and see if we can find anything connecting
Yes,
them. Or...
we were supposed to stop at that
And
place.
Ruby would remember this as well, and she was, oh yeah, she said we could do what we want there, and that leaves us a lot of free reign. And you kind of get the idea that Ruby kind of thinks that's permission to pillage and plunder.
And I'll put my hand on her shoulder and be like, it's not the only place she said that we could do what we wanted.
Ruby kind of like blinks, and she's like not quite sure what he means, but she kind of gives him that fake nod, like, oh yeah, yeah, we could totally do that too, whatever that is.
Really? She might still be in a room.
Oh, gosh.
with a loud laugh.
What's a sailor for you?
Yeah. So Ruby doesn't quite get the joke, perhaps, and she leads on anyway to the building, hoping that perhaps this individual has even greater treasure, seeing as she had just literally lived there the day before. And yeah, they walk over in that direction, unless anyone else has something different to say.
Okay. Well, as you guys leave the tavern, or not the tavern, the inn. As you guys leave the inn, you're presented with the morning mists, some sort of kind of a foggy mist that kind of spreads around the town and makes everything kind of damp. And upon stepping outside, you can kind of smell. It kind of smells like manure. The people are doing whatever they can to get the crops to grow, and so they're out there working the fields and they're fertilizing and they're plowing the fields and everything, trying to do whatever they can. And like I said, you could hear the regular town activities going on, but definitely not too many people walking back and forth. But every now and then you'll see like 2 or 3 farmers with their tools and things going, leaving. And looking at the houses, most of them look like they've fallen under disrepair. And as you're heading to Bessie's house, you can see that a lot of them have, boards up over some of the windows instead of fixing the window itself. They just kind of boarded it up. Or some of the doors are kind of part way off their hinges and whatnot. And some houses don't even have doors on them. And you can just kind of see people sitting inside their houses, this poor folk, doing what they can to survive and do what they have to. And as you get down toward Bessie's home, you see that her house is definitely no exception, and her back door is just completely wide open, and there's just a big trail of mud from this big spot where the dirt behind her house has just been soaked, and there's just mud going into the back of the house.
Yeah, the first thing Ruby would do is she would check, do these houses have like locks on their doors?
Most of the houses do not have any sort of lock on their door. Most of the people here might just use like a bar that drops down over the door. Nothing else too complicated, though.
Yeah, well, would this door have that, like, to where she could have locked it from the inside, basically, using the bar?
Oh, yeah. It has, like, the slats on the back of the door. And if you go inside the house, there's, like, the wooden beam leaning against where the back of the door would be.
Okay, but, like, Ruby could assume that if she wanted to, she could have had this door locked, but she either didn't or someone figured out a way to get in regardless, right?
Yeah, it doesn't look like there's any sort of forced entry at all.
Okay, that's kind of what she assumes. And she sees the mud on the ground, and she looks back to the Laughing Fox, and she says, Perhaps these are like mud people. They like go under the door, and you can tell she's like totally speculating because you've like never heard of a thing probably. But
No,
but
I don't think anyone has.
She'll totally pass it off though as if it's legitimate though. Like maybe they're mud people. They they come in there and they reform on the other side of the door, and then they lift the latch off and open the door, and they let all their friends inside, and they have like perhaps a party, and they collect all the food, and then they go back into the mud, and it's like a theory, like as close to a theory as you could make with no evidence or no logic really behind any of it.
Like, I'm just sitting there like, it could be. You know, just very skeptical. Like, sure, yeah, that's clearly the most simple explanation here.
Yeah, and as Gronk kind of gives her that skeptical look, she would be like, all right, this is the working theory until we find evidence that would contradict it, or perhaps promote a more rational reason, okay? And she would kind of look around and try to investigate what's going on here, if there's anything different about this particular intrusion than the last one, aside from the location.
Okay. What you see when you go into the house, like I said, it doesn't appear to be any sort of forced entry. The block that would go over the slats is just kind of leaning against the door. Maybe this place just wasn't locked during the time, or maybe she doesn't use it very often. And judged by where it's setting, it definitely looks like it's near the door, but not in regular use. When you enter in, you see that there's just mud everywhere. Open barrels with the lids taken off, sacks that have been opened up full of flour and things. The flour and the rice, anything that looks like it needed to be cooked, has just kind of been abandoned. Opened up, examined, and just left behind, covered in mud. But you can see where spots of other items used to be, and they were taken. You see like an empty basket sitting on a shelf, and her cold storage, which would be kind of like dug into the ground, is completely empty. And looking around some more, you'd see that all of her personal items were taken, but you do remember her mentioning that the previous night, that she's taken everything that she needed. But the regular, like there's a bookshelf with a couple of books left behind on it, just some, possibly just some old, not journals, but books written about like how to sew or how to grow food and things like that. Just some basic instructional books and things like that.
And the books go into the bag for future reference.
Of course. And you do find some of her clothing was thrown around, kind of like it was packed in a hurry. It doesn't seem to be muddy at all. But the mud seems to be focused primarily in the back room. This house only has 2 rooms. Three rooms. The room that you're in the back, which is kind of like the pantry where the back door is at, and then the large living quarters area, and then a smaller room off to the side, which is obviously a bedroom. And the bedroom looks like she's taken everything out of there that she needed, but there's no signs of mud. Nothing coming outside of the pantry. It seems to be focused primarily there.
Well, it seems as if the small mud golem child doesn't know how to cook. She or it or he or something between didn't seem interested in taking the goods that required effort to digest.
I start taking a closer look at the tracks left throughout the house. Can I narrow down what kind of creature or if this was human?
Mm-hmm. Certainly. Go ahead and let's see. Actually, yes. Give me an investigation, or what check would you like to use for this? Just a general wisdom check?
Oh, survival's usually.
Survival would be a good one, yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Oh, awesome. So looking down at the mud tracks, normally people wouldn't be able to tell because it's so scattered and strewn about, but you're able to pick out a couple of the foot tracks here that tell you exactly what might have been here. And it looks to be a large, barefooted man, possibly. Huge footprint, bigger than your face. It matches the one that you saw at the house for the other barefoot print that you found. In addition to that, you do see smaller footprints, much smaller, like a child's. And these two sets of footprints seem to be what's been rummaging around in here. And you do also notice that a spot where a barrel has been lifted out as well, possibly one of the barrels for food storage of some sort. But one of the barrels has been taken because you can kind of see the dust outline, or the mud's kind of outlined around where the barrel would have been prior to the barrel being taken out.
So the barrel's gone, though.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a large man and a child. The large man is barefoot. Very, very large. Maybe the theory about the golem isn't so crazy, although mud golem? Really?
Ruby would still stick to her guns. She would say it's very possible. You can make anything with magic if you just know a few of the tricks, and she kind of makes it seem like she would know like a magic trick to do that. But you're pretty sure she's not a magic user, although I mean, she could be, you suppose.
Yeah.
Was this barrel like a full-on regular-sized barrel?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's about the same size as the other barrels in the room, judging by the circumference of the circle that was
Like the player's handbook barrel that weighs like 75 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Ruby would make one note to Laughing Fox, something that she would probably know is kind of obvious, but maybe she didn't think about it. To lift out this large barrel, you'd have to be pretty strong. I imagine a barrel full of goods would weigh well in excess of 1 ruby of weight, as she almost uses herself as a unit of measurement, indicating that the barrel would have to weigh over 100 pounds with everything inside of it.
Usually when you move barrels, you tilt them on their side and roll them, but it doesn't seem like it's disturbed the tracks.
Mm-mm.
No, we must be dealing with some kind of monstrosity. I don't know of any of the races that live around here to be of this size.
Yeah, Laughing Fox, you have passed through here a number of times, and you definitely know that this area is primarily inhabited by humans. There's been absolutely no sighting of giants whatsoever, or anything that is larger than a human, except for maybe every now and then an orc or a half orc from one of the sailing tribes of the orcs would stop by, but that was about it.
And this doesn't look like an orc footprint.
No, it doesn't. Looks to be humanoid. It's got toes, and it's kind of fat. It's very fat, kind of a doughy footprint.
Ruby would just make another wild speculation, and she'd say perhaps it's a mud ogre.
Sure. Yes, mud ogres.
Ogres are a lot more common than golems, from my experience.
I've certainly heard more tales of them.
She would kind of say as well, ogres are a lot easier to make than golems. Golems require these long rituals that take a lot of time, effort, and money. And ogres, the way you make an ogre, and she's about to like explain it, and then she just kind of looks at Thronk and she would say, well, you know how they make an ogre.
I'm pretty sure I know how ogres are made.
No, aren't ogres more violent? I don't think they would just come into a house in the middle of the night to rob it anyway.
And then Ruby reminds you, mud ogres.
They're more docile than regular ogres.
They're made of mud, so they have to be very careful to avoid fights.
Perhaps it's a mud troll. Trolls are a bit more cunning than your average ogre.
Yeah, and then Ruby would think about that for a moment, but that's not her idea, so she'll stick with her idea because she wants to be able to take credit for that when it eventually is true. And if it's not true, then she'll still try to take credit for it, like any good scientist would.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, is there anything else here that we might find interesting looking around, or is that about the exhaustive evidence that we can find here for now?
Yeah, taking your time to rummage around a little more, outside of just mundane invaluables like maybe some sewing needles or a pot of some sort, some cooking utensils, and some things like that. There doesn't seem to be anything of value left in the house, and definitely nothing at the crime scene uh, depicting any sort of other evidence.
Okay, so Ruby just kind of decides, let's maybe we'll find something else somewhere else. Maybe if we thoroughly comb the muddy forest, we'll find our muddy associates. I don't know. They can't hide too well.
It
They
seems
must be large.
this seems easier than following ghost tracks, or however we would investigate that.
Other than curiosity, we know the people we're looking for already made their way over to what's that city called?
Monera?
Monera. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, Monera's where you guys came from.
Would we be able to follow these tracks as they leave this area?
Yes. Well, as a matter of fact, the tracks kind of lead off because it starts off kind of muddy, like right there around the door, and these tracks kind of lead off into the grass.
Into the grass. Well, Ruby would suggest to Laughing Fox, perhaps these tracks are tracks we can follow, ones that perhaps don't lead into the center of town where they can easily get lost.
Let's see then.
Okay.
So I continue to follow the tracks.
Excellent. So we won't have to re-roll because you rolled so high on there. You're able to depict, what's going on in here, and you guys follow it out the door, and you follow it into the grass, and it gets really kind of hard to follow, but you kind of walk along in a straight line until you get to the next dirt part, which is back at the road where it crosses. You see that these tracks just go straight across the road, which is another small grass field, but about 30 to 40 yards away, you see a chapel of the church. And you see an old nun, not a nun exactly, like a priestess, who's kind of sitting outside. And she's just kind of sitting there with a scowl on her face as she's sitting on the steps up to the front of the chapel. And you see a much younger priestess as well, with two children that are kind of running around like she's watching them.
Do you, if you haven't worked this out, it's not a big deal, but which deity?
Oh, yeah, Estar. You know Estar. Most people would know of Estar, that she is the goddess of the harvest.
Okay. Ruby would kind of gesture to her allies. Perhaps the mud golem is hiding beneath the chapel.
Perhaps it is disguised as these people.
And she kind of would note that you said there were two children with you said there were two children or one?
Two. She
would remind her allies, well, there were two children and one adult. Perhaps they're. She kind of thinks for a moment, and then she makes her next assertion. Ruby, you could tell, is not afraid to make stupid assertions, because it'd be better to make a dumb assertion than to not make a smart assertion. And she says, perhaps these three are mud werewolves. Perhaps at night they change into werewolves, and they can't help.
How do they let you teach?
So You're saying that they're human during the day, but mud golems at night.
No, mud werewolves.
Mud werewolves at night.
Or perhaps they're just werewolves that are muddy. And perhaps the door was left unlocked.
Perhaps we should go and talk to them and see if they've seen anything.
Yes, let's do that. I like that idea.
Okay.
Ruby agrees with that idea, and I guess they would walk across the street, and unless one of her allies wants to speak, she'll speak on their behalf. All right, I'd let you do it because Ruby has some dumb things to say that might not turn out well. Perhaps asking about how good the goddess is treating them right now.
Right. I don't know how well I would know the actual worship or positions for people in the clergy of Estar.
Okay. Well, how involved were you with the religious community here on your last visit?
Probably not much at all, unless they have an active chapel to whatever the equivalent of Dionysus is.
Okay, no. You don't recognize these two at all, but you do know that this old lady, you've seen her around at the last time that you were here.
Right. Well, I just didn't, if I would know if I would know position, right?
Gotcha.
If a nun or.
Gotcha. Well, you do know that they're priestesses, and you know that because of the old lady there. You might have had a run-in with her in the past. Maybe she saw you and called you some names or something like that. She wouldn't have been your biggest fan, and she's very conservative lady at heart. You know that.
Call you a heathen.
Got nothing wrong with harvests. Harvest are when you get the hops and the wheat. How you make the beer.
We talk about how you try to harvest women for your lecherous gains.
There was no harvesting going on there, I will have you know.
But the seeds were definitely sown.
Yes, the seeds were planted. The harvest, that's someone else's problem.
Wow. Okay, so as you approach this chapel, which definitely looks to be in worse disrepair than some of the houses even. It looks like this chapel is obviously made of stone, or made of wood on top of a stone platform, and the stone platform is just kind of sunk in, kind of like in Monty Python, where they we built the castle and then it fell into the swamp. And we built the castle on top of that and it fell into the swamp. Well, that kind of seems to be the case with the stone foundation for this chapel. It looks like it has been built upon to try to keep it steady, and they finally got it to where they could keep this wooden chapel kind of steady on top of it. But it definitely looks like it might be a little off kilter. It's a little slanted. Some of the
windows, say the foundation is sinking into mud.
Right.
It's being enveloped by the mud werewolves.
It's being swallowed by the mud werewolves.
So I will approach kind of choosing to take a more of a meekish response and just kind of come up and head kind of down and stuff, not just walking up boastfully or whatever, just kind of walking up and I'll talk mostly to the older woman.
Okay. So you head off toward the older lady?
Yeah.
Okay. She's kind of sitting on a stoop on the stoop up to the chapel, and she's she would be out there, but she's a little too old to be running around with the kids. She can't keep up, and she's she definitely has her arms crossed, and when she sees you coming, Thronk, just kind of narrows her eyes, like, what is this? And as you approach, she just eyes you the whole approach, and you just feel her eyes burning into you.
Right. I'm just gonna kind of bow my head a little bit, not really making eye contact, still kind of like looking out and seeing where I'm going and stuff, but just kind of like, right, show it, like making a demonstration of feeling the judgment,
Oh,
as it
okay,
were.
gotcha.
Um,
And Laughing
being
Fox and
humble
Ruby, are
before
you?
her.
Yes. Laughing Fox and Ruby, you guys are tagging along, or what are you guys doing?
Ruby would be right behind him, and she would be kind of oblivious to the fact that he seems guilty.
Hmm.
To her, he seems like a pretty stand-up guy. Aside from perhaps getting a bit adventurous in the tavern.
Gotcha.
And she would kind of approach this person a bit oblivious, and she'd be staring at her, from behind her glasses and her eccentric outfit and her red eyes, and she would just kind of smile, waiting to be addressed by the crone, perhaps, as she waits for Thronk to do like his introduction and garner as much support for their cause as possible.
Hmm.
So while that's going on, Laughing Fox is kind of just walking around, almost aimlessly or curiously, uh, but she's kind of more looking around the place than anything else. She's just not looking like she's searching the place,
Okay.
but just wandering curiously, seeing if there's anything that stands out.
Okay. Excellent. So, as you guys are doing this, the younger priestess seems to be more interested in you, Laughing Fox, with the two kids, and she's kind of eyeballing you curiously, and the two kids are kind of looking at you, and one of them even kind of points Laughing Fox. What sort of attire do you wear as an elf from the Verdant?
What kind of attire? Not a whole lot. She's wearing like a leather harness,
Hmm.
um, and that's kind of like if you've seen the movie King Arthur,
Hmm.
they made recently, kind of like Keira Knightley's harness there.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay, I gotcha.
So
Kind of like that. Uh, it's almost like a yeah. It's a harness. It's the best thing I can. Yeah, you're right.
yeah,
That's the only thing I can think of to describe it. And they're kind of looking at you because you're so exotic and different looking compared to everything else they've seen, which is just peasant clothes, tunics, tights, and slacks, and just kind of sloppy shirts. So they're kind of really enthralled by what you're wearing. And the old crone kind of looks back and forth between you and Thronk, and Thronk approaches, and she's like, "What do you want?"
Well, ma'am, we've been hired to investigate some of what's going on around here, to see if we can help in any way, and we were trying to talk to some of the local people to see what we can learn.
Investigate what?
Well, we've heard that there's that that times have been tough, and that harvests um, have been have been growing a little poor recently, and people are afraid of what might be happening. And we've also heard that some houses have been broken into with the food stolen, um, which is specifically what brought us out here.
Hmm. Well, you're right about the crops. Estar has certainly not been kind in the last years. Um, what about these break-ins? I do know that quite a few of our townspeople have been abandoning hope. Like Estar has just turned her back on us, but I know it's not true. She's just waiting for the right actions to be taken.
Sometimes a trial of faith is important.
Indeed. So how goes the investigation?
Well, it's very young. Right now, we're still just gathering information and trying to put together some clues so that we can follow them and find out what's happening.
Hmm.
Have you
You know you're
seen
not.
any?
Oh, you're not the first one to come talk to me about this.
Really?
Yeah, an older man who lives here in town.
Do you know his
Old,
name?
old man Flanagan. he lives over there, and she kind of points with a crooked finger, off toward those houses, kind of in the same cluster that Bessie was in. Uh, kind of lived here, was good friends with a lot of the merchants. Uh, he came by a, a week and a half ago. I haven't seen him since. I thought he just ditched town like all the others, but he came and asked me what I'd been seeing around town, and all I've seen is this ghost. This ghost just keeps kind of coming up around the cemetery, and she takes her crooked finger, pointed over there, and points it over there, which is a small cemetery, no kind of fence or anything put around it, but just like a bunch of little headstones. Some of them aren't even headstones; they're just kind of like rocks.
She would see
Ruby,
Ruby's
is that where you
face
saw
light
the
up,
ghost last night?
and Ruby would kind of get excited a bit, and you could see her eyes light up, and she would excitedly retell the story of the ghost she saw in the fog, and how it meandered about seemingly aimlessly, looking for someone, and did not find who they were looking for that particular night. And she would just kind of go on and on, going. And after a while, it would seem like maybe she's embellishing the story at this point, but then she would eventually stop and look to the crone.
So you saw it too.
Yeah, it's real. It's a real ghost. They didn't leave any footprints though, right? But if it left footprints, it probably wouldn't be a ghost.
I don't have the best of eyes, so I wouldn't have seen any footprints. And her, and she points over at the younger priestess. Her doesn't believe a lick of it.
Yeah. Ruby would kind of lean in close to examine her eyes, and
She kind of looks a little cloudy, like she's got cataracts forming.
Yeah, Ruby would kind of blink a bit, and she would say, "That makes sense," and she would just kind of drop it immediately.
Yeah, this white figure in the cemetery. I'll wake up late at night because I just haven't been sleeping well, and it just kind of stands there for a minute, and then it runs. It runs into town, and then it comes back, and it just stands there again.
Ruby speculates wildly, and she would say, "Well, that's because it saw Ruby, and it fled for its life. I am a great ghost slayer and capturer. In theory."
Well, I hope you find it then, because it's been keeping me up. Something needs to be done. Maybe that is what Estar is looking for.
It certainly could be related.
Yeah. And Ruby would think about that, and she would say, "Yeah, that might be it. Perhaps Estar is not." And she'd look at the chapel, and she would say, "Perhaps Estar is not approving of how she's being respected at the moment." She would kind of look at the chapel and see how it's in disrepair, and notice how it coincides with the seeming fall and plight of the town.
And you're right. Everyone's just abandoned us. Years ago, we started watching these little shits, and she points over at the little kids. We started watching over kind of like a daycare. We thought it'd be a really good way to get the townspeople to come back because they're working so hard over in the cotton fields. There wasn't always cotton though. It's kind of recent, and ever since then, people stopped coming here for the harvest festivals. They stopped visiting. They stopped coming by, and so we thought this would be a really good way to get them to come back, but they're just taking advantage of us, like they've taken advantage of Estar and us in this chapel. And she just starts droning.
You said the crops have recently switched to cotton?
Yes, ever since this crook penniless showed up.
Penniless?
Yes, penniless. And she looks over at Laughing Fox, and she goes, and she points at it. She's one of those. or
Oh.
he's one of those. And if you guys recall, you know that on the letter that you received that Hannah gave you, it was written by Penniless Okado.
And oh yeah, so that's the merchant guy, right?
That's the
Oh.
guy who wrote you the letter to. He's the Chamberlain.
Oh, okay, the Chamberlain. Okay. Yeah, and Ruby would see her kind of mention to Laughing Fox, almost in like a sort of racist way, and Ruby would kind of interject, and she would say, "Oh, one of her," and she would kind of come up with a rationalization to try to make it not seem racist. Oh, you must mean brave adventurers, yes. Don't worry about it. We'll get this solved, and this brave adventurer will fix everything, and you'll see that they're not so bad.
Esther would probably be happy if they were run out of town.
Why do you say that Penniless is a crook?
Have you seen this place?
It is
Everything.
certainly less vibrant than the last time I was here.
Everything in this town has changed ever since he showed up. Yeah,
Okay.
Mayor Dewey says that we needed a change. We needed more money. We needed some kind of cash flow.
Mayor
And the
Dewey.
Penniless, yes, Mayor Dewey.
Okay.
He. I apologize. I keep forgetting you folks aren't from around here. And she's eyeballing Thronk a little bit. I kind of recognize you though.
I have been here before, yes.
Hmm. I don't remember you though. You probably one of those ones who don't come around either.
I heard that the town was in trouble and I came back.
Well, at least you have a little bit of decency in you.
And
When my family abandoned me, they left me here, so it's as close to home as anywhere is.
Well, I'm glad you came back then, so we can get this all sorted out.
But you said there was another elf.
Penniless.
And she looks over at you, Laughing Fox, because you say this to her, correct?
Yeah.
She looks over at her at you, and she's like, "Yes, there's two of you. It'd be better if there were none."
Laughing Fox kind of glares at her.
And Ruby would kind of lean over a bit and kind of get a bit uncomfortably close. She would say, there's all kinds of strange people in this town, and they're not just elves. And she would kind of muse aloud, and she would say, perhaps I don't believe Penniless has the ability to make all of your faithful worshippers give up their worship of Estar. Perhaps you need to become a better motivational speaker. Perhaps you could inspire the townfolk to regain the cause.
Is that an attempt at persuasion?
Oh,
Or
that's just
a
an attempt.
suggestion?
That's just an attempt at telling her that she's an idiot.
Well, it
Whether,
goes
whether or not
completely
whether or
over
not
her
she
head.
whether or not she gets that
Yeah.
that the three of the characters here aren't exactly normal to begin with is kind of irrelevant, I suppose. But I mean, if she's not an idiot, she might notice that.
Well, it goes
But
like
you,
completely over her head, and she just kind of like she kind of looks back over at Laughing Fox again.
well, I'm gonna try to cut in and sidestep the conversation a bit. So, did you say there were two elves in town besides my coworker?
No, I meant two, counting this one.
Okay. Well, this one is under my supervision, so hopefully that will reduce whatever troubles may come from that.
And as he says that, you see Ruby write down chain of command.
Well, as this conversation, you could definitely tell she's getting a little heated, and you see the younger priestess with the two children kind of wander back, and the two kids kind of run up the stairs into the church, and the old lady's like, "What do you think you're doing?" She turns around, and the younger one's like, it's all right, Greta. You don't have to go after them. They're just going in to get a snack. Uh, what's going on here? Why are you folks upsetting Greta so much?
We certainly don't mean to upset anybody. We're trying to investigate what's been going on in the town, and we're trying to see what information we can gather.
You know, someone just came by about a week and a half ago about that.
Oh yeah.
And Greta like snaps back around. I already told him about Flanagan.
Old man Flanagan. Yes.
Yes. Not as old as me though.
And Ruby would kind of smile and say, "Well, of course nobody's as old as you. You're the best at being old."
One other thing, have either of you heard of somewhere of like have people been complaining about their food stores going missing?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, quite a few people have had a couple of break-ins where uh, they come to me every now and then. They don't really see Greta too often, but every so often they'll come. I'll speak to the parents, and I'll hear some of the rumors and news around town, and I'll hear that I heard that a couple of houses were broken into where all of their food has been taken out, but it's only been happening in the last week or so. So I don't know if some new bandits have come into town recently. Maybe that's why Greta might be so upset. Maybe she thinks that you're part of what's going on here.
Well,
And
we
Greta's
only
like, "Oh, go ahead."
we only came into town last night, so.
Okay. And Greta's like, "They're here to find the ghost that you don't believe."
Ruby would interject and say, "I believe in the ghost. I saw it myself. It ran away, though. It was scared of me. Theoretically, of course." Ruby would look down and examine her feet, by the way. See if she has gigantic feet.
Muddy, gigantic werewolf feet.
Yes.
No, looking down, they definitely. Greta looks to have some pretty simple old lady feet, and Hera seems to have some little dainty feet, herself as well.
Okay. Her name is Hera?
Hera is the more soft-spoken one, and Greta is the older lady.
Okay. Oh, shit.
But Hera kind of ushers you guys away and says, "Let's let Greta take a little break. Greta, could you go inside and check on the kids and make sure that they're all right?" "Of course I will." And she just kind of like slowly gets up, and like you tell she's struggling to get up. Maybe she's got some hip or a knee problem, but she's like holding on to whatever she can, and she even like grabs onto Thronk, like just grabs him and pulls herself up. And
I'll use my strength to like lift her up, probably faster than she's used to moving.
Yeah, it's like a roller coaster for her. It's like a thrill.
And as she gets lifted up, Ruby kind of says, "Watch your step." Well, if you can, at least.
And she like says some crotchety things as she goes back inside. So Hera kind of leads you guys a little away from the entrance, and she goes, "I'm so sorry. Hera's just not a people kind of person."
Oh no, she was fine. Very very helpful. I'm used to dealing with sailors, so she's quite polite by my standards.
And, Ruby would disagree, but she wouldn't openly say it. She's too busy trying to put together the pieces. She feels as if there's enough information to ascertain what's going on, but obviously there's not. At least not yet. But in her brain, there's always enough information. She would just say, "So do you know anything about this old man Flanagan? I heard he's old, but not as old as Greta."
Oh yeah, old man Flanagan. He's been here for quite a while. He's one of the locals. I believe he left town not too long ago. He came by here asking us if we'd seen anything, mentioning that he was going to go visit Daryl, Mr. Goodrow, over at his estate, since his disappearance, and try to figure out what had happened. apparently the two had been pretty good friends. But he came to me because he was kind of curious about this sighting that Greta had kind of seen as well with the ghost. But I definitely don't believe it. There's been no ghosts. I don't believe in any of that. I don't believe any of that would have been around here. We haven't done anything to disturb any spirits of any sort. So
Ruby would find this a bit strange that a priestess wouldn't believe in ghosts.
well,
And
not. Sorry, I didn't mean to. It's not like she doesn't believe in ghosts. She doesn't believe that we've done anything to disturb any spirits to cause ghosts to be an issue.
She would say, well, I heard that Penniless is the devil. And she would say that and look over to Laughing Fox and smirk and say, but I believe that might not be true. He might just be an elf. A wood elf of some sort, perhaps, maybe a high elf. But I don't think he's evil. But he could be.
And she kind of looks at Laughing Fox and says, "You definitely don't look like the same. You don't look to be cut from the same cloth as Penniless. He's more flamboyant than and ornate than you obviously appear to be." And she's like looking over your attire.
She, Laughing Fox, like looks down. What do you mean, Morph?
Well, he dresses more in like robes, and he seems to be a little more clean and less savage. I'm sorry, I really don't mean to offend you. I've never seen someone like
Ruby
you
would
before.
hear this awkward conversation, and she would interrupt, and she would say, "Oh, yes, you're speaking of a high elf. They're very similar in origin to wood elves, but perhaps they have abandoned their ways of the forest and attempted to emulate a more human style of living. Perhaps one that is not so reliant on the forests."
Laughing Fox says a word in the verdant dialect of Elvish. I'm not gonna try to make one up because I can't think of one right now. But she just says it means the lost ones. It's what we refer to are some of our kin who have forgotten the ways of the forest.
Well, he may have forgotten the ways of the forest, but certainly not of the coin. I could definitely understand, the differences between the two of you. You obviously seem to not be from around here. Are you, or from Monera? Where are you even from?
I believe your people call it the verdant.
Yes, the Verdant. Yes, very wild place. I heard. I've never been myself.
It is. It is both beautiful and dangerous.
Well, feel free to look around if you'd like. I know that you are investigating some things. If you have any more questions, then or excuse me, if you don't have any more questions, then I'd like to head back inside and continue tending to the children.
Absolutely. We're staying at the inn, and if you think of anything else that if you hear anything or you think of anything else, please get a message to us there, or if we have any other questions or anything, we'll be in touch.
Certainly, yes. I certainly will. If I do see anything else, or if I can think of anything that might help you, I'll certainly seek you out at the end then.
Okay.
And just before we leave, Ruby would ask one last question before leaving, and she would say, "At night, it doesn't have to be a full moon, but theoretically, have you seen the kids ever try to sneak out in the middle of the night and get into some mischief?"
You mean the two kids I had?
They seem like they love a bit of exploration, and you could tell like Ruby is very into exploration and ridiculousness. So she would kind of try to suggest that the kids are adventurous like she is and get into trouble even if they're not supposed to.
Well, certainly, children are just children after all.
And she would say, well, we did see 2 sets of small handprints at all the crime scenes.
Hmm, that's pretty disturbing.
How long have you been looking after these kids?
Well, I look after them every afternoon, every morning until the late evening, and I do so a couple of times during the week. I've been taking care of those 2 in there for uh, roughly about 6 to 8 months now.
Okay.
There
And
were more, however. Most of the townspeople have either taking care of the kids themselves, or they bring them in the evening. And I do have a couple that I do take care of in the evening while their parents are able to do their evening work and whatnot.
okay. Um, is there any way that we could get like a list of families that have small children?
Unless you might be able to ask over at the town hall if you don't mind talking to Penniless. I know he can be kind of as short-sighted as Greta in there. Um, But
Well,
if he does hold the census records, he's the Chamberlain after all.
okay.
Ruby would smile widely and thank the nun, kind of like bow politely and then kind of like gently like slap her on the shoulder and leave.
It was a pleasure speaking with you all. And she like turns and begins walking back towards the chapel. And here, guys, I would like to offer you a 5-minute break.
Okay.
Cool.
5-minute break.
I'm gonna get some more water. I'll be back.
I will return in approximately 300 seconds. Mayor Dewey and Buck Dewey. The mayor the town needs.
Alright, I'm back.
Welcome back. I don't know, I saw this picture on Reddit and I felt that you all needed to read it. It will improve your lives substantially. Make you a better person. I approve.
Very nice. The younger priestess name was Hera, right?
Hera is younger. Greta is older. The oldest one of all, yes. Mayor Dewey.
God damn, I need a more comfortable chair.
Yeah. More comfortable chairs is always my dilemma. I just need to lose weight, so all chairs are more comfortable.
Or that chair needs to gain weight.
That would be nice. Get a giant lazy boy as my computer chair.
I have the chair that I stole from college.
Nice.
From Adrian College, it's the exact same chair. I stole it. I took it when I graduated. I took the bed too.
Well, now it's going to be on the internet. They're going to hunt you down.
Yeah.
If you wish to know, his address is 1234
Banana Street.
Banana Street. Yeah.
All right, I live in the non-extradition country of Texas.
Right.
It's like the Wild West of America.
Right.
Well, you heard what happened to me at homecoming, right?
About what?
Oh, I'll tell you later.
Okay.
It's funny.
That is a story that is not appropriate for live recording, perhaps.
I like that image that you posted on your.
It's important.
I need to print some of those off and put it on the lady who lives in apartment 4. Put it on her vehicle.
I'm home. I don't need to park right.
Right.
I park on my yard.
We have numbered spacing, and her frickin' van is always like 2.5 feet over into the next space, which is actually an unnumbered space, which means anyone can park in it. So she takes up her whole space and on almost half of an unnumbered space where guests are supposed to be parking, and parking's already limited, so it's hard to find a good spot for your guests to park, and they end up having to park further down because of her not being able to park gas.
Joys of apartment living.
Does Laughing Fox have a tattoo?
I Actually, I don't know. I haven't decided if they're tattoos or just paint yet.
What about
Kinda.
piercings? Does she have any interesting piercings, like a hole like through her septum where you could like see through one side and out the other?
Nothing that large. I always thought those piercings were kind of dumb.
Full-on
She'd have like
racist 70s TV bone through the nose.
she'd have like
Yeah.
12. She'd have like 12 ear piercings.
But she does have a few feathers like braided into her hair, and
Hmm.
some bones on a necklace.
Hmm. Gotcha. You might even have some scales from the primordial dragons and whatnot.
Would be if we could. Depends on how powerful you want to make them in the worlds, because they'd be something where it's like,
They shed scales. You could pick a
Yeah.
shed.
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, I'm pretty sure because you guys are kind of like at the forefront of the primordial battle between those dragons and the eternal darkness. I
I'm
mean,
just also
not
trying to
all.
balance the idea that we're level 1.
Well, yeah, yeah, you are. Yeah, you're level 1, but I
That
mean,
doesn't mean you couldn't run in there and grab a scale after everyone else did the work, or it could
yeah,
be
exactly.
a family heirloom or something.
Well, yeah, there's all sorts of possibilities. It's all how you spin it.
Yeah, there's one of the most significant paintings on her body is of an eagle, but it's not very picturesque as
Hmm.
like it's not like a realism tattoo, but it's very abstracted, I guess.
Okay.
So that's kind of the I've been trying to figure out how I see these guys in my head, but I mean, like, I think I've definitely hit the no, these guys are super freaking tribal. That's why just for
Hmm.
that that's why I put the whole thing in her backstory. Like when she first made it into a human city, she got thrown out for indecency.
Can't be
So
walking around naked here. You got to leave.
no, which would be
Pick up the
if we ever go
children!
to the Verdant. Just like, what did I do?
If Ruby
Right?
was there, she would have said, humans are not fond of. Well, then after she would say that, she would be like, well, they actually are fond of, but general practices would suggest that you refrain from showing your reproductive and mammary type organs.
Your primary and secondary sexual features.
Yes, which was
They only appreciate tertiary sexual features here.
Oh
Tertiary.
boy. Oh boy, do those humans appreciate those tertiary sexual features.
which but which, by the way, that goes completely like Laughing Fox does not understand that in the slightest. It's just fucking weird. Like, real what she's like, what's the big deal? I'm confused.
Why y'all looking at me like that?
But do you have the like a handout or something for the deities?
Yeah, I actually have it on the Tales of Waycrest Obsidian portal.
Oh, I looked for it. I didn't see it. But
Let's see,
I can look
under
for it.
the wiki, and then click on the World of Thera, and
Right.
there's a grid with the deities listed
Right.
there, as
I
well
only
as
have,
a story to go along with it.
I only have 7 right now, right?
That is correct. So 7. However, I'm not opposed to incorporating, like, if there's a deity from like the Forgotten Realms that you want to use or something like that, it's not a big deal. I can incorporate it. This is just primarily, this is what I have the story based around. So the
Well,
Pantheon doesn't, yeah.
I can take one of the ones that you have here and kind of run with it and flesh it out,
Okay,
or
yeah.
I can make up a new one if you, whichever you'd prefer. With.
Oh yeah, if you would like to use one of these, I mean, I'd like to see the Pantheon get put to use outside of this chapel. So so if you have anything on here that looks interesting to you that you'd like to use, go for it.
Well, I see Thulu as the goddess of the unknown, and I'm thinking that probably meshes fairly well with being a like the goddess of sailors and
Yep,
whatnot as well.
that'd be a good one. Yeah, definitely. Um, Goddess of the unknown, and her domain is knowledge, of
Or I
course.
guess Utah is goddess of storms and disasters. It's probably a little bit better for.
I could see that. Yeah.
Lulu would be
Um,
probably what Ruby would do, since she's all about trying to learn the unknown.
yeah, definitely.
Not that she would be super religious anyway.
I kind of imagine the elves to be a little bit more animistic,
hmm
less deity focused.
I could see that. More interested in ancestry and tradition and passing things along person to person instead of relying on the faith in the deities and whatnot.
Yeah, like the
And
story.
maybe animals and spirits and whatnot.
Yeah, I was thinking a bit more on the spirit side, but
hmm
the traditions were definitely passed down from.
hmm
Um, I gotta think of a good name for it. Kind of like a what would they call it? There is somebody like there are usually elves in the tribe who their only job is to memorize all the stories.
Okay, I gotcha. A storyteller, essentially.
Yeah.
A
Storykeeper.
keeper, a story keeper. Yeah. You ever heard of this? You ever read the book The Keeper? I think it was called. Um,
Yeah, I know about that book.
yeah, and there's actually a career, a vocation where this person's job is to remember stuff
The
and
giver?
stories and memories. Yeah, the giver. That's what it is. The
Yeah, The
giver.
Giver. I read that in high school,
Yeah. So
which was weird because like I think they're not really even supposed to have books really, except for like that one person I think.
yeah, only the giver is allowed to have books.
Oh, I remember that one.
Ruby would totally be the giver.
He's also the
Well,
only
there,
one that they. He's also the only one allowed to see in color.
Yeah. How dare you look at red?
well, it's just like it's just kind of like I imagine more like the bards where it's basically it's less like remember this like all these novels word for word, more like you have to remember these stories, and a lot of the stories are told either in verse or through song. That way, nothing is missed.
Yeah,
So
Yeah,
very
very
much like the
Homer,
bards.
a very Homer-like position where it's
gotcha.
passing
Yeah.
on the oral tradition. And
Yep.
Ruby would totally suggest you guys should write that down. It'd be a lot easier.
you're gonna steal the thoughts from our heads. How dare you write it?
You and your magic books.
Okay, so you guys had just finished speaking with Hera and Greta, who obviously, have some qualms with what's going on with some of the town's activities and whatnot. So, what is your next step? What's your next destination?
I think we need to talk to. We either need to look at old man Finnegan's place and see what if we can see anything that might have happened to him, or we should talk to Penniless.
Ruby would rather talk to Penniless. She would be a bit more interested in the elf. She probably knows a few back where she lives, but probably not like a lot.
Sorry.
What were we trying to get from Penniless anyway?
She would like why he destroyed the town with his evil elfin ways.
Yeah. The town apparently went downhill shortly after he arrived, and also he is apparently at least partially responsible with them switching their crops to being cotton primarily.
Oh,
And
okay.
so,
Speaking of
like,
that, I have a great idea.
Yeah.
And don't get mad at me if I break your whole campaign, okay? Ruby knows why the whole town just went to shit.
Mhm.
With her knowledge of nature, she would think for a moment and she would wonder if improper crop rotation led to the downfall of this whole city.
mhm,
Possibility.
it's true.
How long has this guy been here?
This guy has been here, what did I say, about a year?
Ruby
Yeah,
would
yeah,
find it a bit
cotton,
hard to believe that
about a year.
crop rotation would be the downfall of the town after a year.
hmm
Since it usually you usually wait like a few years to cycle.
Yeah.
So.
But that's an option. Maybe he has
But then again, I'm
super
also
demon crops.
It is possible that Estar, being goddess of the harvest, has particular crops that she thinks are better here, and thus is cursing the town in some way.
Perhaps this land isn't powerful and vibrant enough to support the crops such as cotton.
Can be pretty hard on the land. Wait, never mind. My character has no idea. It's sort of...
Ruby might know. Basically, would there be any reason for Ruby to think that the crop selection itself, in and of itself, would be any cause for this?
I mean, well, I'm no farmer myself, so I wouldn't really know.
You are the god of this realm.
However,
you are the god of this realm.
That is a possibility. That is definitely something that maybe this land isn't quite proper to be growing cotton in, but it definitely seems to be a very moist climate. So I'm not sure if cotton requires a lot of humidity or not, but maybe the minerals in the ground.
The god of this world seems not to know particularly. So our metagaming knowledge would allow us to believe that he has not planned for this. Therefore, it is highly unlikely.
GM doesn't know equals not the right path.
Yes. I am not metagaming. I am just applying logic and reason.
Right?
The god of this realm seems to be at the lost.
Seems to not be a farmer.
Okay, so your prep for the next few sessions is going to be reading Wikipedia on various crop types. How to grow cotton
on eHow.
We're going to come back to next session, and he's going to be like, okay, well, it turns out that they're growing cotton at all, so the pH balance of the soil is...
I think I got a 21 on my roll to investigate the GM. Found a substantial amount of information.
An insight check.
Yeah, so we'll go over to Penniless, and as we're walking over there, Ruby would kind of ask Laughing Fox if she's okay with perhaps the mean words that Greta had spoke of her, calling her perhaps a bit of a savage, and if she's okay with talking with her strange counterpart who has forsaken his elven ways.
So Laughing Fox just looks at Ruby. It's not like we have any. It's not like we have anything in common. I don't know what I could offer that you guys wouldn't. He is not from the. He is not verdant.
And when she says that, Ruby thinks for a moment, and then reminds her, perhaps not technically, but I suppose at some point many species and individuals originated from the verdants. And Ruby would kind of assert that I have perhaps a bit of verdant ancestry as well, but obviously not quite the same as you.
Maybe, but he has become of the city. He's from a people that are lost. It is our tribe's duty to preserve the land. He seems to preserve his pockets.
And when she says that, Ruby nods. She understands. And she obviously thinks back to her family, and she says, it's true that, according to your old elven ways, that he's lost. But perhaps from his perspective, he might believe that you're lost, but in the past. Perhaps that you haven't properly adapted to the world as it currently stands.
I'm sure he does, and that's what makes them even more hopeless.
And Ruby kind of like frowns a bit at this, and she says, "You should probably try to be a little bit less judgmental of other people's life choices. Not everyone has the opportunity or the desire to always pick the same life path as you. You gotta keep a broader perspective of the world and try not to limit yourself. And she would probably lead them up to the house at this point, letting Laughing Fox ponder that unless she has something else to say.
No, although you would get the feeling that there's probably a little bit of bitterness between the verdant elves and the high elves, or whether or not that's one-sided is unsure. But the verdant kind of hold them like in contempt or with anger, but almost as if she pities them.
I mean, Ruby's like that to a small degree with her mom, but she doesn't like look down on them as like beasts who have forsaken uh, their natural rights or whatever. But she'll let it go. She won't bring it up any further, figuring that there's not anything she would say that would convince Laughing Fox otherwise. And I imagine they would head up into his house now and knock on the door or whatever they have to do. Is it a town hall or something?
Well, yes, he's actually in the town hall. Um, and as you approach the town hall, this is kind of like a gathering circle, kind of like a square almost. And you can see that there's obviously the town hall, and about 40, 50 yards behind it is a very, very nice house that seems to be actually rather well kept. And just a little off to your right, you see the garrison, which is more or less just a stone tower with some shacks and things, as well as a little training yard that's kind of fenced in. And you see that they're kind of there's some guards mulling about, and they're kind of moving horses about. And it's just to the right of the garrison is a blacksmith, and you can see he's like ferrying a horse, like he's clipping, he's clipping their hooves, and he's got their foot up on the thing, up on his knee, and he's clipping their hooves. And the guard is kind of like standing there lazily holding them as he kind of like looks at you guys, and then um, you can see that there's like one or two merchant stalls that have people at them, and quite a few of them that are just completely empty. Just kind of like little wooden booths that have been put together, but most of them seem to be gone. But you do see a couple of people still kind of showing their wares on these little wooden tables. And the town hall is like a long two-story building with like an entrance and an exit, and the doors are wide open. And looking inside, you can see what appears to be kind of like a long table with a couple of guards standing around it. And so this is kind of like the town square area of Maroon.
Okay, Ruby would note all this stuff and just kind of want to enter the building unless something else stops her.
Okay. As you guys walk in, and you see this scene before you where there's a couple of guards kind of lazily standing around, because it's not really like they're guarding anything per se, but they're just there because it's their job. And you see this elf kind of sitting at this table at the center. There's a couple of townspeople walking up and providing him, what little bits of coin they have in a small purse. Obviously collecting taxes, it appears. And he's got a tax book and he's documenting it all. And he's got like a little chest sitting on the ground next to him that he places it inside of. And he hands people documents and things every now and then. And it's kind of there's only about four people here in line, but you guys can walk up and stand in line for just a couple of moments before you get up to see him. And Penniless looks like this.
Oh,
Zoom in a little more. But he's just kind of sitting there. Thank you to whoever this character, darksun39.tumblr.com,
Oh,
for me stealing your picture from Google. But so he just kind of looks like this, sitting there, and he looks very elaborate with his red robe over top of his gold and red vestments. And he's got like this long dark hair and this pale kind of frail face. And he definitely seems to be the tall, slender type.
I am definitely glad you provided a picture because when you were describing that scene, I was just imagining Scrooge McDuck the whole time.
But he looks out of place compared to everyone else here. And as you approach, he just kind of eyeballs your group and kind of says, "What could I do for you? Um, you don't seem to be from the town of Maroon."
Well, figuring that he's probably the type that prefers flattery, I'm going to approach and do a very large kind of a bow and say, "No, we are visitors to the town here. We heard that there were hard times, and we wanted to see what we could do to help."
Laughing Fox raises an eyebrow at Thronk.
And you could tell that Ruby probably had spent like her time in line, making sure her clothes didn't look horrible and dirty. And
Gotcha.
she would kind of properly introduce herself, and she would say, "Oh, I am Ruby Firegaze. I'm a professor at the Maroon University." And she would smile and extend a hand out for him to shake.
And he doesn't even attempt to lift his hand to shake your hand, to shake your hand. He just kind of looks at it and then looks back up at the rest of you. She's eyeballing Thronk a little bit too, and then she looks over at Laughing Fox, and he just kind of shakes his head and says, "I don't know what sort of trouble you believe there may be here, but I definitely appreciate the visit. At least one of you is civilized enough to extend a hand." And he kind of stands and he's looking over at you, Laughing Fox, as he does this. And he like takes your hands, Ruby, and just kind of like leans down and he doesn't kiss it, but he like daintily kind of holds it and bows kind of, and then releases it and says, "So is there something that I can assist you with?"
Ruby looks over to Laughing Fox to detect her hatred levels of this individual.
She's just looking at him very, very unamused at this. Not like seething hatred, but just like as if you would look at like a crippled puppy on the side of a road.
Oh,
Almost
no.
like pitying him.
Like an 8 out of 10 on the eye rolling level right now.
And she looks over at you, Thronk, as well, and says,
Is this a guy or a chick?
"It's a guy."
Keep saying she.
Oh, sorry. My mistake.
I mean, I know they're elves, so it's kind of the same.
Well, he,
I,
my mistake.
I know you got the image from Tumblr, but your pronouns are slipping.
Right?
Well,
But,
to be fair, high elves. I mean, guy, girl. It's hard to tell sometimes.
right? You wouldn't
They're-
have known if I hadn't
they're-
told you.
They're fancy elves. Okay.
So he kind of looks over at you, Thronk.
Mhm.
I kind of recognize you from around here. I don't think that we've actually introduced. Maybe that's a good thing.
I have been here before. Yes. I was abandoned here and had a bit of a rough time, but I have taken some time to figure things out.
Well, at least you're not hanging from a tree. So what could I get for you?
Oh, burn! Alright, well, Ruby wouldn't actually say that, but that was totally me saying it. Ruby would look and see him counting his money, and she would just kind of explain to him, "Yes, we were sent here to investigate the disappearances of numerous individuals in this town. Would you happen to know anything about that? We've heard of strange stories." And she would totally like just make this. She would say, I'm trying to come up with the best way to say this. We've heard of individuals, perhaps covered in mud, that have been pillaging different buildings in this town as well. We have our own theories as to what they could be, but perhaps we could use your expert opinion.
Hmm. I don't know. Excuse me. I don't know about any pillagings. I've kind of kept to myself over here in this side of Maroon, just doing my duties. And if you're talking about the abandonment of this fair city's people of their duties, then feel free to ask the townspeople. I have no interest in knowing the reasoning behind their disappearance or leaving.
And
But
when he says that, though, Ruby kind of interjects, and she would kind of appeal to him. Okay, she would say, "But wouldn't you want additional individuals to be paying taxes? If they leave, there is no benefit for you in that situation."
you do strike a good point there, and I will ask you this: Are you here looking for something specific? Because I would be happy to provide you some more information to get you to leave. I just need to know what it is you want.
And Ruby doesn't get angry. Okay, Ruby Ruby doesn't get angry. Perhaps she'll get more annoying when someone makes her angry. She tries to never get angry, and she would say, "Oh, well, I would just like to know perhaps what happened to the folks in that manor. We're here to settle their estate, and we can't do that until we officially know what happened to them."
Do you mean to say that you are the representatives that the fair Hannah Goodrow had sent to uh, claim the estates?
And Ruby would nod, and she would say, "Well, to be honest, it was such short notice that I had to hire." And she kind of looks at Laughing Fox and Thronk, and she thinks for a moment to like insult them to try to get this guy's favor. And she would kind of think about it for just a second, and she would just say, "It was such short notice. I cobbled together the individuals who were available at the time, and we rushed down here immediately. Perhaps we were a bit hasty in getting down here, but..." And she'll look him over one more time, and she would say, "Perhaps it's better to be punctual than it is to be completely ready, because nobody truly likes to wait any longer than they have to."
Mm.
And Thronk will kind of look back, kind of like, what the, like, like being insulted, and then just kind of have a moment to be like, yeah, okay.
This guy's like, "Yeah, I can see it."
So he kind of looks at it. He looks like dead right at Laughing Fox and says, "Hasty is an understatement." Um, perhaps you'd be interested in. So you are investigating the disappearance of Goodrow. Have you decided whether or not you were going to release the house into the custody of the township of Maroon, or were you going to claim the property?
Out of character,
Mhm.
is this our decision to make out of character?
Yes, this is your decision to make. It's actually part of, she couldn't afford to pay you guys well, so and Hannah had no interest in taking the property herself because of its dilapidated state.
Well,
So,
then by that, then Ruby would, normally Ruby might think of just letting them have it, but this particular individual is not the type of person she would like to give anything to. So she would say, "No, I would take it into my personal custody, and perhaps we could negotiate some forfeiture of the property to you. I know you don't need the hovel that rests on the property, but you could perhaps use the land for its farming or just property value in and of itself.
Hmm. Well, you're right. There's not much value to the property itself. However, we are trying to interest others to returning to Maroon, and so by having more available property, especially in a better state than some of these shacks that you might have seen here, um, just might increase the value of some of the nearby properties as well. So perhaps we could strike a deal.
And with that, Ruby would nod and she would say, "Yes. If you were to give me any information that might help us solve this, I could see the land values of this town going up exponentially, assuming they could grow crops and sustain people and not be the cause of their death and murder." She kind of adds the last part at the end.
If only the people of this town were as good at growing things as they were at being poor, it wouldn't be such an issue.
Oh, Jesus. And at the point of that, Ruby would she wouldn't really even know what to say, and she would kind of be perplexed, and she would say, I don't know, maybe they're just professional at being poor. And
well, I heard it was your idea to have the people switch over to growing cotton.
Yes, as a matter of fact, it was. Dewey had brought me in from Monera. I was an agriculturist from outside of Monera, and he brought me here personally to oversee the changes that we had discussed.
Oh.
And Ruby would hear this, and she would nod, and she would say, "Yes, it's very strange. Ever since you came here, for some strange reason, these professional poor people have lost the will to properly work. It's very strange. I don't understand how that happened."
And you kind of like see one of the guards. He's kind of like got his hand up over his mouth, and he's just kind of like. And Panelist looks a little, like he knows where you're going with this. Like he feels the blame on himself, but he's trying to shrug it off as best he can. I'll answer any questions you might have. If you're looking for Daryl, it would be very nice to discover his fate. I assume he's no longer in this world, possibly dead someplace. Or maybe he's even abandoned the estate and returned to Monera or another nation. Or maybe he even left to Alistair. I'm not quite sure. But wherever he had taken off to, it definitely left his estate in quite the wreck. If it were simply up to me, I would have seized the property myself.
Now, were you close with him?
No, I'd have to say Daryl was an interesting fellow. He had a booth right over there, and he points at one of the market stalls that are empty. He said he used to be quite fond of selling some exotic goods like some tapestries and rugs and things that he would bring from Monera during his travels. Things that these poor folk won't really have a use for.
Sometimes a little luxury can inspire people to create the necessities.
Indeed. A little bit of culture introduction would have definitely been helpful to these people. Well, if you have nothing else of me, there is some business to attend to, and he kind of looks at some of the townspeople behind you guys. There's only like two of them in line, but to him, it's he thinks he's so busy and has a whole lot to do, and he's so important. So if you don't have anything else, I would like to get back to tending to these townspeople. I believe I've shared all that I can with you.
Okay. Well, if we find out anything, we'll let you know, or if I have any further questions.
Excellent. And again, if you would like to discuss the estates, ownership in another time. My doors are always open, as you can see.
Yeah, and Ruby would politely nod and bow before him and leave. Whether or not her allies do, which they probably wouldn't.
Yeah, Laughing Fox doesn't even bow. She just kind of walks out uh, with the parting phrase. I hope you find what you're looking for in your gold.
And with that, he just kind of scowls. He doesn't even say anything. He just kind of scowls at you.
Soon as Laughing Fox is outside, she's like, I think I need to wash this. I need to wash up or get this filth off of me. She is now visibly disgusted.
Ruby would look at her as she says that, and she would kind of narrow her eyes a bit in confusion, and she would say, "Do you want to become clean like a high elf?" She muses aloud.
I mean of the encounter when there are stories of the lost ones in my tribe, but lost may be too generous of a word. I think broken is a more apt description.
And Ruby kind of nods, and she kind of takes a second sniff of Laughing Fox, and she says, "You do smell a bit like perfume now."
I'm just saying, I think that man was the most arrogant farmer I've ever met.
He's a professional farmer, Ruby would remind him.
Cool.
And with that, I don't know what time it would be in game right now.
Right now, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I did think there was a distinct lack of wealth in this town, and I believe we just found it.
Yeah, Penniless is definitely, like, from the quality of his outfit, you could definitely tell it's like exotic material, probably from the Midnight Isles. Um, uh, Ruby, you probably spotted that as well, noting his outfit has more of a gnomish quality to it.
We could probably rob him and trade his stuff for enough food to feed this town for a year.
Ruby thinks about this for a moment, and like you can tell, she kind of entertains the idea. And she would say, "That'll be our backup plan. How about that?"
Yes, if all else fails, Mr. Penniless will make a very generous donation to the people he's been swindling.
And she would kind of make it known. She would say, "Sometimes wealthy individuals make rather lucrative donations to their places of living upon their retirement from the realm of the living."
Oh.
And she
So just to be clear,
smiles.
we're talking about like having a populist libertarian insurrection against this guy. Taxes are theft.
Ruby would just say, sometimes
Start throwing some tea in a river.
Ruby would say sometimes people just happen to fall downstairs. It's a naturally.
So we'll throw him out, we will make like they do in Prague and throw him out some windows.
Yeah,
There's out the window.
There's some fetid wolves on the outside of town.
Someone will watch this and they will laugh at my reference. Well, only be one person because nobody remembers these things. But
yeah, at this point though, what time of the day would you say it is?
It's going into the afternoon now. You guys, by the time you've moved around from place to place and spoken to all these people, I'd say it's hitting about high noon. The sun is directly above you.
And Ruby wouldn't really know what else to do from here. She would still have her ace in the hole. She would suggest that they could go visit the graveyard of sorts. Although her experience as a master adventurer,
Okay.
master being in quotation marks, would state that the ghosts are more active at night and perhaps that would be the last thing they would do for the day.
Okay.
Greta did
As
say that
oh, go ahead. I'm
Greta
sorry.
did say that it comes at night, so I
Hmm.
think that we could come back to that when it is dusk.
Hmm.
And in the meantime, we could possibly investigate Old Man Flanagan's house,
Okay.
or we could try to
And
track down Major Dewey about why he brought in the farmering
Is
the
it
farmer.
Mayor or Major?
Mayor.
Does he have a son named Buck? I'm just curious.
No, he does not have a son named Buck. But as you guys are standing here conversing, you do see that some soldiers, obviously, are riding in on a couple of horses, and they're taking them into the yard where there are, there's about 6 of them in total, and they're kind of riding their horses, walking you know, gently into the yard there where they have all the horses tethered up inside the garrison. And you see that they're just cycling them out there with the blacksmith and things, but there definitely seems to be guards mulling about, and they're bringing horses.
Are these guards or soldiers? Like, it's very big
Well,
distinction.
okay. Well, the guards are soldiers. The guards of this place, you know that roughly off of what just general knowledge from the 3 of you, that the Maneran army doesn't have much of a presence, but you know that there's a fort not too far, the Fort Seclair, that is kind of like the base of operations for what little bit of an army there is down here in Waycrest, and that they kind of serve as the guard for Maroon as well.
Okay, Ruby wouldn't think too much of that, and she would just suggest they investigate Flanagan and his hovel, seeing if that also is the same as the others.
Hmm.
And,
So,
yeah, that's it.
okay, so you guys head off to Old Man Finnegan's house. And as you approach Old Man Finnegan's house, you see that his house is definitely not the fanciest around, but it looks like a very humble home. Um, and the doors are closed up. He doesn't seem to have the same dilapidation that all the other houses are having. They maybe had a little bit of money to afford the repairs that the others couldn't, but he definitely seems to have a very humble home.
He didn't let the realtor convince him to buy something he couldn't really afford, so he's kept the maintenance high.
Yeah, pretty much.
I guess I'll go up and knock on the door. Because we don't know that he's gone, right? He's just not been seen
Correct.
for a while.
Yeah, he hasn't been seen by Greta in a while. As you knock on the door, there's no answer. You
And
sit there for about 5 minutes, and nobody answers the door.
Ruby would look around and she'd say, "Oh, yes, I'll come in," and then she'll just open the door and enter and look around.
The first thing that you smell when you open up the door is the smell of mold and rotten fruit, and you're kind of like hit in the face with this smell, like it's stale air that's just been kind of like frozen here in this home, and it's just kind of moldy and rotten and smelling. And there's actually some gnats buzzing around. There's a bunch of them, and doesn't seem to be much of interest in here except for like an end table and a bed, as well as just some barrels for food and things like that. But the door wasn't locked when you came in. It just kind of
No mud
pushes
in here?
open. No, there's no mud in here whatsoever.
Well, I'll go off and look in other rooms or something and see what I can find.
Okay. After you rummage around a bit, Corey, looking around for things you could find, you guys kind of focus over on the end table where you see a journal just kind of plopped onto the table with a kind of mostly used jar of ink and a quill just kind of lying there.
You'd see Ruby check to see if the ink is salvageable.
Yeah, the ink is usable. I mean, like animals or excuse me, the gnats aren't trying to get into it to eat it or nothing. So
you would see Ruby like quickly like pocket the ink and the pen, and she would kind of, you'd see her as before, kind of eye through the journal,
Okay.
looking for information.
Going through the journal, you can definitely tell from reading some of the early entries that he's just kind of a friendly guy who everyone just kind of knows. All the people of the town seem to know. But there is one page bookmarked at the very end. And when you open it up to read that entry there, it says, "My suspicions were correct. There seems to be something watching us. Maroon isn't safe any longer, and I will find out what happened to Darrow. After inspecting the house, I left it as it was, but it appeared to be that he had been robbed. I began asking around town if anyone had seen Darrow, or had heard or seen anything strange. I spoke with Greta. She'd mentioned the ghost of a young girl appearing in the cemetery. She only noticed the ghost only in the last week, so it cannot be a coincidence. I'll scour the ward behind the chapel and the cemetery to see what I can find."
And with that, Ruby knows the ghost girl is in fact a mud werewolf ghost girl.
Dun dun dun.
And we will stop it here because it's going on 2 hours now.
And you need to rewrite your whole campaign because we just figured it out.
Right?
That'll be.
Zombie mud golem ghost girl did it.
It wasn't a zombie, remember? It was a ogre.
Oh,
Right.
A mud golem ogre
Werewolf.
werewolf ghost girl.
ghost girl. Yeah.
Sounds like a Pathfinder race.
It does.
Yeah, fucking Pathfinder.
Oh, it's only 14 RP. Can I use this?
There's only
The rule
like five
adjustment is only plus
character.
4. I mean, it's the same thing.
This stick laying around. That's to hit players who ask me stupid shit like that
All right, well, I will
That's why
Oh,
gaming
go
online is not quite as good as in person because you can actually hit people in person.
There's a lack of
Check your
violence
dice.
in the online gaming.
D20 to the eye.
You step on a D4. How does it feel?
Some things are just too far. Too far.
You step on a D4, roll a D4 for damage. All right, well, I will end the broadcast here.
All right.